Okay, so welcome to the Finding Balance podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Adrian Mesa. Today we have a special guest. Jessica is coming to us with her movement, which is called Why Wait Till Friday. And I want her to tell you guys a little bit about her background and her profession and in business as well. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is exciting. So yes, Why Wait Till Friday is my baby. That's my passion project. It started about 8 years ago. It came to life through my therapeutic work. I've been in the world of therapy and counseling for about 25 years now. And I have like this tremendous passion for humans. And through working with such a grandiose population, the one thing that I just saw on the constant is that everybody wants to find joy, but we don't do enough on the daily. So about 8 years ago in a session with a client who I felt kind of had it all to the world, she expressed how just there was this tremendous absence that she could feel of joy and fulfillment. And so I asked her, what brings you joy? Like, give me something in your life that brings you a sense of fulfillment. And she said, going to see the sunset. And I asked her, when was the last time that you went to see the sunset? And she said, about 5 years ago. And that night I sat with that conversation and I realized that in the process of searching for this emotion, we don't do enough in the simplistic to find it. And I called it Why Wait Till Friday. Mm-hmm. And so that's how it birthed. Like I said, I've been a clinician for 25 years. I've worked mostly with adults in my process. I also own a home health agency where we provide care to patients within their home, mostly bedbound patients that it's difficult to get from point A to point B, that it's taxing. And I've introduced this concept of Why Wait Till Friday and mindset and the importance of the simplistic middle moments to feed our joy, regardless of the challenges. And it's really made like a tremendous shift in our practice in general, because I feel that there's a value in the human on the most simplistic level. Mm-hmm. And I think that gives everybody the opportunity to feel in one way or another, almost like in control. Gotcha. So that's kind of what this is all about.
Why do you feel that Why Wait Till Friday is necessary?
So many reasons. I think it's because it brings words to life that signify in a very simplistic, intentional, and consistent way, which is our philosophy, something attainable that humans can live by in order to feed their joy. So I'll share with you, I'm a believer that emotions are feelings in motion. I think that feelings in life are not permanent. I think they're circumstantial, and I think they have a lot to do with what's going on the external. But I think joy is a fundamental characteristic that we own as people. And so I think this movement and this idea of Why Wait Till Friday gives people the ability to control that. And with very, very small, simplistic actions of self-love on the daily, of recognition, they can control it, they can own it, they can feed it, and kind of like let it be the fundamental piece. It's not anything that requires major change or major commitment, right? Because I think a lot of times when we think of mental health, when we think of the well-being of the internal person, people are exhausted before they start. You'll get a lot of resistance from people when they feel like the milestone seems, long term, when it seems like it's something that requires too much. I think that there's a defeated state, right? And so this is a concept that's attainable, that's doable, and that anybody can live by and achieve.
Yeah, I think that you're right. When people are trying to embark on something new, they want the extreme. They want to go from 0 to 100 when really there's so many baby steps to learn along the way. And this goes for anything. I call it the work. Lately, I've been calling it the work.
Okay.
What is the work? The work is whatever it is that you've been avoiding, right? The work that is required to get yourself from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. And so a lot of people, they get into quote unquote the work, but instead of taking those first initial steps, they want to dive in full-fledged. And that could be exhausting. It could be taxing. It could be overwhelming, right? If
100%. There's, you use from 0 to 100. I think that's an excellent example is, there's so much in between 0 and 100. And a lot of times people think that until you're at 100, there's no success. And that's where we give up, right? Because we can get you tell somebody, okay, this is the goal, right? And they get a lot of times, especially in our society today, where there's like this immediate gratification, and what we see on social media, what we see on on TV, everything is like it's happening right now. And you order Amazon and your package is there in 2 hours. But mental health and life well-being from the inside out doesn't look that simple. It doesn't work that way, right? And so I think with Why Wait Till Friday and with this concept that we're talking about, I think the 0 to 100 that you're using in that work, that's where we define the joy, is in the in-between, right? So if you're starting something today, tomorrow is important. We don't need to worry about what's going to happen in a year. We have one of our sayings that we use a lot at our in our movement is we talk about intentionality and not outcome. If you look at this from a day-to-day, and every day matters and every moment matters, and you find moments throughout your day that are worth it, that you're honoring yourself, that we call them the middle moments, then the journey from 0 to 100 every single day has something joyful. But when you're fixated on the outcome of day 100, you missed 0 to 99. And all of that is where the bulk of our true life story is. We don't get a book and go to the last chapter. We read every single page of that book. That's the story. Same thing with our lives. Everybody's working towards that, that 100th day. And yet in the in-between, there is so much of the bulk of who you are, but we forget to be present. We don't even realize it's happening. And what we need, with the goal of Why Wait Till Friday, is slow it down. You want to get there? Let's go step by step. Let's enjoy the process. Let's be present in what's happening. Again, in a simple, intentional, and consistent format. And you'll get there without getting fixated on these outcomes that we want. A lot of times in my practice with patients, people, I want this, right? They can very clearly identify to me what they want. But that's not an overnight thing. What comes quick leaves quick. And so teaching people to regroup and start fresh, and every single day give it, even if it's 5 minutes, then the outcome is permanent, right? Because then it's habitual, then it becomes a lifestyle.
So how does your movement go about teaching that, right? Because I think that's what most people need, is to realize this is a long-term endeavor. If you want lasting results in whatever it is, whether you're working on a relationship, yourself, your profession, a business, this is not going to happen overnight. But how do you instill that sense of understanding to the individuals that come to you, and how does the movement teach that?
Okay, so interesting. That's actually a great question. So I myself, in clinical work for so long, I started to live this movement. So about 8 years ago, when I came up with this concept of giving it a name, which was Why Wait Till Friday, I started to journal aggressively every single day. And in that journaling, every day I pinpointed something that I consider and call the middle moments, right? And in those middle moments, what I did was I either acknowledged something that I was doing for myself, okay, or acknowledged something that happened in the day that was fueling this joy that I talk about. So through example and through true, I guess, through implementation of the movement, we create these conversations, right? And so through our social media, through presentations, through a podcast, we're teaching people through example by my own life story and how I've been able to incorporate this into my own life and how it shifted my whole perspective, even from a clinical perspective. I think that that's the message, right? That's how we get the message across, by giving tangent, real examples. And again, using this idea of middle moments and teaching people to recognize and honor the middle moments. Because I think a lot of times what happens is that we are, in one way or another, we're fueling our joy, but we don't realize that we are. We're looking for like the big event and saying, okay, today was, the grand opening of my, number one organization in my life. And that's the only, but that day comes and that day goes. And then what? Right? Where we're teaching, and again, through conversations, through the podcast, through the movement, through the brand, through the clothing, where we're reminding people that it is in the today. It could literally be that you sit down with a child and have a 5-minute conversation that fuels that joy. It's not just doing it, it's recognition of that and teaching people. Like when you sit down and you journal, a lot of times people think that they have to journal the negative. So I'm a believer that if you can document the good and do it again, it becomes habitual, right? So become an expert of your good day and then do it again. But a good day doesn't have to be, again, the wedding or the graduation, or No, a good day can be the most simplistic of formulas as long as you're feeding that and recognizing that it's happening. I think that's the biggest key is the recognition of the good things that are surrounding and the things you're doing for yourself intentionally, right? What good is it that you went to the gym, left the gym, didn't even realize that you went to the gym because half the time you're working or it's literally walking in the gym with intention and honoring yourself like I'm here, I got here, I did it. This is a middle moment. This is fueling my joy today, right? Not just allowing it to happen. So I think a lot of this is through communication, conversation, and then example. Because like I said, I've been really, really living this movement for 8 years.
And it's funny that you gave the example of the gym because I feel like the gym is this thing that now people are just checking in. It's a checkbox and we did it, okay, and we move on to the next thing. But really, I think when you really take it in and you're mindful of what's going on, it makes you aware of yourself, your body. What kind of work do I really need? What do I really need today? Right? Because it might be stretching for a little bit more. It might be giving yourself a little bit more self-care instead of just running straight into a HIIT class and giving it out everything you got. But are you honoring yourself by doing that? And what are the long-term implications of not being mindful, of not being self-aware? And that trickles on to the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Right? Because
absolutely. It's that lack of presence, right? Yeah. That it truly and you know, I say something to my people all the time and people that follow us is if you create an intention behind the things you do good, for example, working out, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people want to work out. A lot of people talk to me about, you know, how do you implement this into your life? I'm an advocate of it, but I'm an advocate of it because of what it does on the inside, right? The outside happens, but what it does on the inside. And I share that very candidly because I wasn't always that connected to my internal place. But my point is that I create an intention to my workouts. So if I have a goal of the week that I want to take care of my body, you know, and my inside 3-4 times that week, every day in my journal, there is an intention for that workout. It could be to honor my children. It could be to honor my own self. It could be in gratitude. And what that does is that throughout that workout, I am mindful of this intentionality, and it creates a general presence and mindfulness to the care that I'm creating versus, like you said, just starting the workout, finishing the workout, being done with it, and not giving yourself a minute to be like, damn, I did this. Like I was here, I took care of my body, I took care of my internal place. I feel good. My mental health is, you know, I'm checking in with myself. And again, you're creating the middle moments. That's the whole concept of Why Wait Till Friday is the acknowledgement of the moment. Sometimes middle moments happen where by default it's a good moment and you honor it, and other times you create it for yourself. And I think self-honor, just like honoring others, is of great value, right? So again, I use that term of intentionality because I feel that when you create an intention to the things that you're doing, you do them because you're accountable. You're holding them at a higher regard, and then you're creating a mindfulness. So you know that you're doing this to honor something. So it kind of creates this idea of like, I know I'm doing this for this, so I'm more present. I'm more in tune with what's happening versus just it happens. It's like in fast forward, right? I feel like we live a life very much in fast forward, and Why Wait Till Friday wants us to live in where we are, be present in the now, right? Versus what will be, you know, don't start your workout thinking about what you have to do after the workout, Definitely. Right? Don't start your day already wondering like how you'll get through and be done, that checklist, right? Like one thing at a time, be here, be present with it. It's a gift.
How do you make people aware of the fact that the big moments are that brief, right? And they're not as fulfilling as we anticipate they may be, because although they look beautiful on Instagram,
right.
And they might get a lot of likes and a lot of clicks. Internally, sometimes those moments may either fall short of our expectations or are just very short-lived. So how can we get people to recognize or to feel those little dopamine hits that we're desiring on a day-to-day level while they're accomplishing these very small tasks that seem minuscule in comparison to this joyous event of a ribbon cutting or a grand
Correct.
Opening, et cetera?
So we do a lot of that in this concept of middle moments. We encourage people to share their middle moments. Mm-hmm. We encourage people to note them, right? And middle moments are exactly that. They're the most simplistic of things throughout our life that feed our joy, that are not outcome based, that are not the grandiose event. And so the way that we encourage people is by sharing our own and then talking about it. We talk about it all the time. We usually don't discuss in platforms or arenas anything of the biggest nature. I think that that's what we learned that, right? Like I think in social media, like you said, and all the likes, and I think by default, we know that those grandiose events happen. But what we do is that we communicate and share a lot more of the in between. It could be, something as simple as you're playing a board game with, your children, for example. And that to many is just insignificant, but to our movement and to someone like me is everything.
Yeah.
Because what I realize is in that 30 minutes that I spend playing that board game with my children, that's worth noting. That's where if I'm present and I dedicate myself to that moment, I feel that that's a fulfillment that stays. Where I feel like these big, ribbon cutting events last very little and are not fulfilling. They're not lifelong fulfillments, right? They're very temporary in nature. And Why Wait Till Friday is about that consistency of fulfilling that place on the regular. So it's just literally a perspective switch. And the only way you can switch a perspective is habitually, right? So it's like that constant reminder.
Something I've just experienced recently where I was kind of overlooking some of those small moments is that I've built this practice, right? It's been 4 years. It's grown. It's kind of self-sustaining in terms of I don't need to be present all the time. And so my daughter just started summer. And I post on social media, we go to the gym. I mean, she's 15 years old. We go to the gym. We're hanging out in the morning. I took her to breakfast somewhere in Brickell. So we're just spending time together. And my friend Alex just pulls me aside and he says to me, "Hey, Adrian, that's really cool what you're doing with Eva." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Man, you're taking a morning on a Tuesday and you're just hanging out with her. And you took her to the gym and you took her to breakfast and then you took her to the office. And then I never got that with my parents." And he's saying that, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I was overlooking it. I didn't even think about it. I was just going through the motions, just another day. And let me see how I occupy Eva for a little while.
Right.
But then since he said that, this morning, we pulled up to the gym. And I didn't even tell her, but I thought it myself. I was like, this is cool. Like, it took me a while to get here, but this is something that she's probably not going to forget. And I think what I've realized raising a child is that you don't know which moments are going to be these core memories or these very lasting. Like, she's brought up things to me that I'm like, that was just another day. This was nothing. Oh, Papa, you remember that day that we did this in the kitchen? I'm like, no. So I think it took somebody else pointing out this. I guess how did you identify it? Not the
Middle moments.
The middle moments. I'm sorry.
That is a definite middle moment.
Yeah, these are the middle moments. But these middle moments are going to stand out a lot more than blowing out candles on a birthday.
It's so funny you're saying this. So I have two kind of points there. For one is the honoring of the simplicity, right? That's not the way that we're wired, right? So to me, and I say this to my team quite often, flexibility of my time is something that I honor tremendously. And I think that when we are able to own our time and be able to have that freedom, like you said, of on a Tuesday doing this, it shouldn't be taken lightly. That alone is a middle moment. That alone is something that I am so grateful for. Like there are times that I'm driving in my car, to the office at the time that I chose to get there. And I will literally I'll literally sit in the universe and be like, I am so grateful for this. Like, I am so grateful for the ability. Obviously, it's taken commitment, hard work, dedication. But when you get there, again, it goes back to what do you do with getting to where you were headed, right? When you're there, you got to be grateful for it. You got to live it. You got to enjoy it. It's not, okay, what will be next, right? It's, okay, now I'm here.
I'm guilty.
Right. Of course, because people that are ambitious and are, and ever evolving are always looking to feed that, that adrenaline a little bit. But I think with this movement and this idea and me just really working on this on the daily, it's an internal grind. Those simplistic things that I have earned, I'm very, very aware of. And I'm literally teaching people to be like, damn, I own my time. To others, I may be like, of course, pretty much everybody after COVID owns their time. Everybody works remote. But the reality is that this was hard work. That's one that I can. The other thing is funny because a couple years ago, we put on like some home videos. And there was a time in my life where I felt like my world was falling apart. There was a lot happening, a lot going on. Many years ago, it was like the economy had crashed. I was in a transitional professional time in my life. I think I was actually back to school for graduate school. And things were hard at home for me, I felt, from an adult perspective. But we put on these home videos, and my children in these videos kept pointing out all these like most simplistic things. Like my daughter was inside of a box playing like little house thing. There was another video where there was like a little chair set and they were pretending it was a wrestling ring. And I remember in those moments, I was so not present because I was so fixated on that we needed more. And I was so fixated on the fact that like this was just not enough. And one of the biggest things about Why Wait Till Friday is enoughness and being okay with what is. It's okay to work hard for more. It's okay to have ambition, but it's not okay to paralyze the present in search for tomorrow. And I'm guilty, so guilty of it. And what I learned from sitting with my kids is that what I thought was shambles was an amazing life for them. And sometimes we have these false, fictitious expectations. That's why I've transferred from expectation to intentionality. I'm a huge believer in focusing on the intention. Hard days will come. Tough times happen in every aspect of our life. But if we work daily to be present, if we feed our joy a little bit each day, then that becomes the foundation of who and what we are. And then we sit in an enoughness. And so we literally, like the other day I was sitting outside in my pool, like in the pool area. I've always dreamt of living on the water in my life. Like I don't live on the water, but I have a really cute pool and I have like my home looks like it's on the water, right? Because I think you should kind of make your dreams regardless. Like you don't have to go live on the ocean to bring the ocean to your home. It's kind of my philosophy. And I was sitting there.
How do I bring the ocean to Westchester?
That's what I did. So I live in Westchester.
Oh,
I do.
Me too.
And my home looks like, anybody that walks in my home is like, wow, this is like a VRBO. That's the vibe and it's because at the time that I kind of did the home, I could not live on the water. And I decided that I was going to bring that vibe and that flair of my dream to my home. And it really feels like you're in a vacation home, and it's a cute little, and it's everything I ever want. But it took me a long time. And the other day, like I said, I was sitting by the pool. I love to be in the sun. I was sitting by the pool, and I thought to myself, I am literally sitting in my enoughness. And I shared that with the world, right? And to others, it might seem so simplistic what I was doing, right? And where I am and in my little home. But my point is that it's your story. It's your narrative. We do a lot of what the world expects of us and not enough of what is within our own life, like our script, our narrative. And it's come to a point in my life and like in this vision and in Why Wait Till Friday that I own the story. And this is my story. And this is okay. This is enough.
How do you get people to that point though? Because many people live their lives by society standards, right? And we're constantly influenced. And you keep mentioning enoughness. We live in Miami. We want over the top and more and more and more. So, and we're constantly judging ourselves based on the standards that we're seeing, of somebody living on the beach in a penthouse with all glass walls, right? And now those condos are $25 million or whatever it is. How can we take it back a little bit and say, wait, what I have is more than I ever thought I was capable of attaining, and this is enough for me?
So I think that in this movement and in this opportunity that I've had to like speak to so many, and even, working in private work, what I don't take away ever from the idealistic thoughts, because I think dreams are nice and I think that it keeps us going. But I'm starting to teach people to pick up the pen and write their story, and to make sure that the parameters of the page are their reality. Because it isn't in the fantasy that we always feel like we're failing. Because if we live fanatically and we live with the idealistic dream as a reality, it's fake. If we can say, my dream is to one day do this, that's okay. That's a dream. It's in a different chapter of my life. But if we're living in the chapter today, only wishing that that dream was a reality, then we miss the opportunity to see the beauty of what's today. So I've learned to teach people to rewrite their story. I was very big into narrative therapy work, and narrative therapy is a lot about like creating the story of the individual, the characters. All it does is give people the power. It's the same concept that I have with joy. To me, joy is a fundamental characteristic and value, but each person individually owns it. Happiness is going to come and go. Sadness is going to come and go. There's so many things within our lives that are external that we don't have control of. But the joy we own, nobody can touch. And that's where I start to teach people, pick up the pen and write the narrative. Forget about what your neighbor's writing. Forget about what you saw on social. Write your story and make the best within the pages that exist. Because we have our pages. Our stories are with our... You want to make chapter 10 look a little different, that's fine. You'll get there. But how are you going to make chapter 3 that you're in right now your chapter? Because we don't know if we're going to get to chapter 10. Mm-hmm. The world is unpredictable. And so many people, especially like we say, in today's world, are living to fulfill the dream of somebody else, of what we see. And it's fictitious. It's like saying I live in Disney World. Mm-hmm. Well, I can bring some characters to my home and I can decorate like Disney, but my reality is that my address is not Orlando. Do you see? Absolutely. So you know, people say, oh, I can't wait to go on the vacation. Well, I tell people, okay, get a jar, put the name of the place you want to visit, and start putting money in there every week. 10 cents, $5. That's your action towards your dream. Now start writing your reality. So it's not that we're eliminating, because I think that when we get into the all or nothing, we lose people. It's like I said at the beginning, if we try to get to 100 too quick, then it's overwhelming. And that's why Wait Till Friday is very simplistic in nature, because I want people to hold on and own, right? Without giving up, because it just becomes too hard. Same thing happens with writing your story. It's literally get the pen and start writing one line at a time, but you own it. You are the creator of your journey. If we keep giving the pen to the dreams and the desires of others, we're always failing. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like me. If I said, okay, I'm gonna move to the water today, that's unrealistic. It's not where I'm at. That's not my enoughness. That's not, but I can bring a little bit of that dream to my life today.
Do you feel that a lot of people just set themselves up for failure when they start having this all or nothing thinking, where they feel that if I don't have that, then there's nothing else that's going to fulfill that?
That's absolutely correct. And that's why when I said about the perspective shift, it's about getting comfortable in your real, getting comfortable in your own life. Because again, if we keep on with this idealistic plan, it's very difficult to get there in many circumstances, right? It doesn't mean that you can't dream it, but we do need to stay true and we need to stay real so that we don't feel like we're failing. There needs to be almost like a revamp of what success looks like, because the reality is that success is defined in many different ways. Mm-hmm. To some people, I mean, you and I know we're in the mental health world. For some of my clients, just getting out of bed is 100% success, mm-hmm. because getting out of bed may have caught that person that got out of bed after maybe 1 month of not being able to even shower has just as much value and appreciation of success and the person that invested in the stock market and just won $1 million. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying? Absolutely. This person, that's their success. But to me, there's no true script on what success looks like. It's very individualized. And that's what I want people to start to recognize is, what does mine look like? What's my personal success look like, so that it's attainable? And so then this simplistic, intentional, and consistent formula, you're constantly feeling like you've done something good, right? Where if the person that just getting out of bed is the greatest thing we could do for the day, gets fixated on this person that just invested the $1 million mm-hmm. and is out of bed, always going to feel like a failure.
Of course.
So it's revamping, it's regrouping, it's creating realistic expectations and always staying intentional.
How do you guide people in terms of, I guess, the journaling, and to help them just come to terms with the reality that they're living in? For instance, there's a lot of people right now who are in their 30s who are still living at home with their mom and dad. The cost of living is through the roof. It's embarrassing for them. There's shame that's involved with that. How do they own their story and recognize, like, might be a blessing in disguise? Like I told people, I recently said something along the lines of, there might be somebody who's in Brickell, who's in your dream apartment, but you find yourself living at home with your grandparents or your parents, and you don't realize that the love that you come home to, the meals that you have cooked for you with love, the company and the support that you have at home might be extremely fulfilling if you just recognize that it was there. And if I did place you in that condo, in that penthouse that you think you'd be happy in, you might very well be miserable. So it really depends on your perspective. So how much of it has to do with just recognizing where you are no matter what?
So you asked me when you began this question, and you brought up a lot of really good points about the journaling, right? So to me, journaling is like a revamp of the mantra, because I think when we write it, repetitively, and we really like see it, once it's there, we believe it. Like you see it, you believe it, you achieve it, right? And so when I teach people to document and to be present, that's the concept is, okay, yes, there's a person that lives in Brickell and they're on their own, and that person is experiencing their own challenges. We all have challenges. Your challenge, that person that's living with their grandparents, like you said, their challenge may be that they want to move out. And they can have a jar, and we can fill that jar to achieve that goal. I'm never going to take that away from you. But I'm going to teach you to find the middle of what you're in right now and be grateful for it. And find the good in those things. We become an expert at finding the good within this situation that you feel is not really what you dreamed of. Doesn't mean that you have to be here forever. But we're not going to spend the next 5 years hoping that I can move to Brickell and miss out on 5 years of your life, like I've seen people do, where literally they spent 5 years just, how do I get out? How do I get out? I want to move there. I want to get out. I don't want to. And so many amazing things happened in those 5 years that was fueling their joy that they didn't realize. So it's about literally honoring what's happening, but documenting. So in a case like that, person that's living with their grandparent and they're getting fed, every time they get fed, I'm going to have them write that down. How grateful am I for this meal that I have today? Or how grateful am I for the hug that I got this morning that if I lived on my own, maybe I wouldn't get. And it's literally that perspective, that mantra, because like I said, when you write it, when you see it, you believe it, you achieve it. And now those mantras start to change. So now, yeah, I want to move out. And yes, but it's okay. I'm enough. This enoughness concept starts to exist. To me, it's repetition. The repetition, the conversation, the guidance, the realization of owning your story. Finding the good characters within the story that is existent, not from the fictitious side, which is idealistic and dream.
Have you run into any issues in terms of having people, I guess, that are somewhat resistant to journaling? Because right now we're so distracted with so many things, and it's hard for people to sit down and just write down their thoughts, because before you know it, they feel like, oh, this is nothing. What am I doing? This is a waste of time. Instead of saying, well, let me honor this assignment and try to really do some digging. Do people, I don't know, do you get resistance about the journaling?
So I do get resistance, and journaling is definitely not for everybody, but there's so many ways to document. You can voice dictate. You can do it on the notes of your phone. You don't have to open a journal. You could take a picture of a middle moment. It's really documentation to me, and knowing that you're intentionally searching for the good within your story that fuels your joy, that then allows you to live this Why Wait Till Friday movement, which is why wait to have the apartment on your own, same concept. So I always tell people, it doesn't matter how you do it, just document it. Find the good in the narrative. Be the author of your story. If that means voice dictating, taking a picture, it doesn't matter. But if you do it consistently, then all of a sudden you don't realize it, but you're fueling that joy. And now what seemed unbearable or seemed like it was a true fail starts to feel okay. And you start to see it from such a different angle, because sometimes we don't have control of what's happening, but we have control on how we perceive what's happening, right? And how we can say, okay, you know what, this may not be so bad.
How much of this do you feel that a lot of these exercises just involve understanding how fleeting life is? I've had the gift of working in healthcare since I was 23, working in a pediatric ICU. So I was seeing children at a very young age lose their lives, be involved in very traumatic circumstances, cardiac anomalies, transplants of all sorts of organs. Then later on, I got to work in nursing homes where I saw death staring at me in the face again. So I was seeing the beginning of life and end of life and seeing like, wait, at any point in time, this can go. So I think recognizing how fleeting life is makes you more aware of some of these smaller moments. I don't know what. It's just a thought that I was having as you were speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you feel about that?
Definitely, it's funny you said. So the person that has faced death or traumatic near-death situations is very quickly humbled, right? But empathy is a very difficult thing to attain unless you've experienced it, right? So, of course, if people can understand how fragile life is, then it's a lot easier to appreciate the most simplistic things in life. I don't necessarily preach that that vulnerability or that, the fragility of life, because I don't feel that everybody can connect to it. Gotcha. And can empathize with it. And sometimes what I have found in my own
because
work,
it becomes too distant, right?
Right. So it's something that you don't empathize. Some people just can't get there unless they've truly experienced it. Gotcha. But what I've also found on the flip side of that is that I never want anybody to think that I don't think that their situation is challenging enough, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes if I bring up a grander situation or something that is near death, which is probably the worst, I guess, thing that can happen, then they feel like I'm minimizing what maybe their story is. And I'm really big about like validating where you are. Can there always be something worse? Absolutely. But it's your story. So I don't necessarily go there. But what my experience has been is that people that have experienced anything, near death of any way, I actually, it's funny. So obviously I've been in healthcare like you since I was very young myself in one way or another, and just dealing with humans, mostly during vulnerable times in general. And I recently had two situations very near death. One was my daughter's best friend, who I'm not going to share because it's going to be on our podcast very soon. It's an amazing, powerful story that changed my life for sure. And then in January of this year, very interesting, I tend to be pretty healthy in general and was not feeling well. I knew something was off, had been on vacation, and during my vacation felt very strange. I can only explain it as just debilitated, very heavy at the heart area, full all the time, not able to digest, strange. I had been to the doctor. They couldn't identify what was going on. Bottom line is I ended up having an intestinal obstruction and was very sick and had emergency surgery. And I would say that for about an hour, I was touch and go. And I remember every piece of it, even though my body wasn't really responding, but I remember it consciously. And people have asked me, I shared my story. It is on my social. And I did that because I was shifted. When people ask me, well, how do you feel? Or how are you now? Or the only response I can ever give is that I was shifted. And I was shifted because I literally feel like somebody grabbed me and in Spanish it's jamaqueado, but literally somebody just took me and shook me and was like, you're still here. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay in your lane, in your passion, because life is fragile. And you, like I said, and that's why I think I answered you that way, is because I didn't really know how, I know how fragile life is, but I didn't really know, like, within the depth of my being until I experienced that. And I just see it different. I see everything different. My perspective in general, even with all the work I've done for mental health, and my perspective as a human being will forever be different, because I will never forget that moment and that time of, like, just all these physicians and all this, madness that was happening and this unknown. And it's wild. It's wild. So I think humans, we unfortunately, we react to situations, and so it's difficult to get people to empathize and be present in things that they haven't experienced. So, to kind of go back to when I usually try to get a person's story and their own narrative and pull from that, not try to get them to understand something that they have never experienced, because I don't think I don't think it works.
Yeah. Or it might be just way too far-fetched for that individual and you've lost them.
Correct.
Because it goes right over their head.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm not sure why though. I guess as you're speaking, I'm trying to understand myself in the same thing. And because I know that when you first mentioned your movement to me, I was like, wow, I could relate to this. This is what I'm living. This is what I'm experiencing. And as you're talking, I'm like, well, so like photography is big for me. It always has been. But it's always to document the moment. And again, it's because I know that I'm taking a picture of Abuela and this person sitting at the table. But somewhere in my being, I've always realized, like, this moment is fleeting, and these people that are together may not be together again. That's because correct. Of life. Life circumstances happen, whatever they may be.